Noah lay motionless at my feet as the nursery door slammed open behind me. A silver medicine cup rolled across the marble, ringing once before stopping beside my unfamiliar hand. Blue morning light cut through the curtains, cold against my bare ankles, while the room smelled of crushed lavender, candle smoke, and something sharply medicinal. "Step away from my son." The voice behind me was low enough to make the glass cabinet tremble. I turned. Adrian Blackwood filled the doorway in a black military coat, one gloved hand resting on the hilt at his hip. His steel-gray eyes moved from the unconscious child to the dark stain on my sleeve. Two guards stood behind him, their boots wet, their faces already certain of my guilt. I opened my mouth, but the mirror above the fireplace caught me first. Pale skin. Silver blonde hair. An Omega's bonding collar circling my throat. This was not my face. Then the memories struck, pages read beneath the harsh white light of my old apartment, the villainous stepfather who tormented Adrian's heir, and the execution scene readers had praised as justice. Elias Blackwood would die by his husband's hand. In 30 days. I asked you a question. Adrian crossed the room. The temperature seemed to fall with every measured step. I looked down at Noah. The boy appeared about 7, small inside his embroidered nightclothes. His lips were parted, and each breath escaped with a faint whistle. Red blotches climbed above his collar. The novel had called this attempted poisoning. Yet the silver cup smelled sweet, almost like almonds, while the rash carried the unmistakable signs of something else. A broken honey cake lay beneath the bed, pale crumbs caught in the rug. "He can't breathe," I said. Adrian seized my wrist before I could kneel. Leather creaked around his fingers. "What did you give him?" "I don't know." The answer sharpened his stare. I forced myself not to pull away. The man before me was not ink on paper. Cedar and winter mint rolled from him in a controlled alpha warning, and his thumb rested over my racing pulse. "My last memory isn't this room," I said, choosing the smallest truth I could survive. "But if you keep holding me, Noah may die before anyone decides what I am." A raw, scraping sound came from the bed. Adrian released me at once, not out of trust, but because his son mattered more than his rage. He lifted Noah with startling care and shouted for the physician. The guards moved toward me. I raised both hands before they touched me. "The cup may be evidence. Don't let anyone clean the room." Adrian stopped at the threshold. His gaze slid to the cup, the cake, then back to me. That single instruction had changed something. Not enough to save me, but enough to keep me alive for the next minute. The physician arrived in a rush of wool, camphor, and clattering instruments. As he examined Noah, Adrian ordered the guards to lock my wrists. Iron closed around my skin, rough and icy. I watched the physician check the boy's pupils and listen to his breathing. Nobody asked why Noah's rash had appeared before he drank from the cup. In the story I remembered, they had never needed to. Elias was cruel, so cruelty explained everything. "He lives," the physician finally said. "But the substance is unknown." Adrian laid Noah beneath the blankets and turned toward me. Sunlight caught the Blackwood signet on his hand, the same ring described in the execution chapter. My knees threatened to fold, but I planted my feet against the frozen marble. "Confine him," Adrian said. "The family tribunal convenes in 30 days. One guard tightened his grip on my arm. "And the sentence, my lord?" Adrian came close enough that only I could hear the quiet answer. "If my son does not wake, I will carry it out myself." The words matched the final page exactly. But as they dragged me past the bed, Noah's small fingers twitched toward the discarded honey cake, not the medicine cup everyone believed I had used. 30 days remained before Adrian killed me, and the first clue to my innocence was lying in plain sight. A wet, ragged breath cut through the nursery before the guards reached the door. Noah's back arched against the sheets, and angry red welts climbed above the collar of his linen nightshirt. Elias twisted free so sharply that a brass button tore from his sleeve and skipped across the marble floor. He's not poisoned. He can't breathe. Adrian blocked the bed, broad shoulders black against the firelight. Cedar and winter air rolled from him, cold enough to raise bumps along Elias's arms. You will not touch my son again. Another wheeze scraped from Noah's throat. On the carpet, golden crumbs clung to the broken honey cake beside a smear of almond paste. Elias remembered the manuscript's careless sentence about Noah's childhood weakness, a detail never connected to his death. Even the scent of bitter almonds made the boy ill. Then watch him die while your physician treats the wrong thing, Elias said. Adrian's jaw locked. Elias lowered himself slowly, keeping both hands visible. His rash is spreading. His lips are swelling. Ask your physician whether poison does that this fast. The physician bent over Noah, fingers searching the child's neck. His face drained beneath the warm amber lamps. My lord, his airway is closing. Adrian moved first. He swept Noah into his arms and carried him toward the adjoining washroom, where steam clouded the mirrors and warmed the tiled air. Elias followed despite the guard's hands reaching for him. Keep him upright. Strip away anything that touched the cake. Adrian obeyed without argument, tearing off Noah's crumb-stained collar while Elias opened the physician's case. Glass vials clicked beneath his shaking fingers. Most held sedatives and antidotes meant for deliberate poisoning. One slim bottle bore the name of an emergency stimulant Elias recognized from his old world's medicine, though its silver cap carried the Blackwood crest. That dosage could stop his heart, the physician warned. Elias studied Noah's weight, the concentration etched into the label, then drew less than half the prepared amount. Doing nothing will stop it first. Adrian caught his wrist. His palm was cold, his grip powerful enough to whiten Elias's knuckles. Their eyes met through the steam. If you harm him, you already promised to kill me. Elias pressed the syringe into Adrian's hand. So choose whether I deserve 30 days or 30 seconds. The Alpha released him. Elias administered the medicine and counted aloud, each number measured against Noah's thinning breaths. At 12, the boy coughed. At 17, air rushed into his lungs with a raw, blessed gasp. Adrian sank to one knee beside the tub, still holding Noah upright. Water soaked the hem of his tailored coat, but he did not notice. Noah's fingers curled into Elias's sleeve. Papa Elias, he whispered, voice rough as sandpaper. The room went silent except for dripping faucets and the physician's unsteady exhale. Adrian looked from his son's hand to Elias's face. For the first time, the Alpha's expression held no certainty. Elias removed the contaminated cake with a folded cloth and placed it on a porcelain tray. Test the almonds, the honey, and every hand that served him. Adrian rose, Noah secured against his chest. The execution is suspended while he recovers. Elias's knees nearly gave way, but the guards closed around him again. Suspended is not pardoned, Adrian continued. You remain confined to the East Wing. Every letter, meal, and visitor will be recorded. 2 guards will follow you at all times. Because I saved him. Because yesterday you did not know how to read a medical label. Adrian stepped close, his lowered voice sharper than the rain striking the windows. Today you calculated a dosage my physician missed. You speak differently. You move differently. Even your scent has changed. Noah stirred against his shoulder and reached past him for Elias. Adrian watched the small hand open in the cold space between them, then turned to the captain of the guard. No one is to punish Elias without my direct command. The order stripped the guards of authority in a single breath. Adrian carried Noah from the steam-filled room, but paused beneath the doorway's blue morning light. You have interrupted your sentence, he said without looking back. Now I intend to discover who is living behind my husband's face. Rain ticked against the narrow windows of the east tower, each drop sharp in the silence of the guarded chamber. Gray afternoon light slid across the iron key turning outside Elias's door, followed by the captain's measured footsteps fading down the stone corridor. 3 days had passed since Noah's airway had nearly closed. 3 days of meals inspected by guards, letters confiscated before Elias could touch them, and Adrian appearing only as a dark silhouette beyond the nursery doors. Elias moved the untouched tray aside and placed a folded sheet of paper on the black oak table. When the lock opened again, Adrian entered alone, carrying the cold scent of cedar and rain. His gaze traveled from the sealed windows to the paper, then settled on Elias. "You asked for a private audience. I asked for 30 days. Adrian shut the door. The click of the latch sounded final. "Your execution was suspended, not pardoned. Then you lose nothing by hearing me." Elias pushed the paper across the table. The movement made the guard outside shift against his armor, metal scraping faintly through the door. "Someone gave Noah almonds despite every servant knowing his allergy. Whoever did it expected me to be blamed, and they almost succeeded. You were found beside him. And I kept him breathing." Adrian's expression did not change, but one gloved finger pressed into the paper's edge. "That contradiction is why you are still alive." Elias stood, forcing his knees not to lock beneath him. The room smelled of extinguished candles and damp stone, cold seeped through his thin house slippers. "Give me access to the rooms I occupied before my supposed memory loss. Let me question the household staff and examine anything connected to Noah's meals. 30 days to identify who poisoned him." Adrian's eyes narrowed. "You expect me to place my son's safety in the hands of the man accused of harming him?" "No. I expect you to watch me." Elias nodded toward the locked door. "Keep your captain at my shoulder. Search everything I touch. If I lie, you will have your proof before the month ends." Thunder rolled over the estate, low enough to tremble through the table. Adrian unfolded the paper. Elias had written only 4 terms, without flourish or appeal. Access under guard. No contact with Noah without Adrian's permission. All evidence surrendered immediately. 30 days ending at midnight before the scheduled execution. Adrian read the final lines twice. "And your price? If I find the culprit, you dissolve our marriage and let me leave House Blackwood." For the first time, Adrian's stillness broke. The paper crackled under his hand. His alpha scent sharpened, filling the chamber like frost spreading across glass. Most condemned omegas would ask for wealth. Protection. A place beside their husband. "I don't want your name, your fortune, or your bed." Elias met the storm-gray eyes fixed on him. "I want my freedom. You want the truth. Noah needs both of us to stop treating this like a private war." Adrian crossed the room in 2 silent strides. The air changed around Elias, warmer where the alpha's body blocked the draft, yet heavy enough to make each breath deliberate. Adrian lifted Elias's chin with 2 gloved fingers, studying every detail of the face he knew and the stranger behind it. "The man I married would never surrender the Blackwood title voluntarily. Then perhaps you should stop judging me by what he wanted." A faint sound came from the corridor. Small knuckles tapped once against the door before a nurse hurried Noah away, his protesting voice muffled by distance. Adrian released Elias and turned toward the sound. The hard line of his shoulders shifted. Not softened, recalculated. He returned to the table, removed his signet ring, and pressed it into the wax Elias had prepared. The Blackwood wolf emerged from the red seal. "The east wing remains locked after sunset," Adrian said. "You will not approach Noah alone. Every discovery comes directly to me." "Agreed. If you attempt to escape, the bargain ends." "Agreed." Adrian opened the door and summoned the captain. Torchlight spilled over the wet black floor, catching on silver buckles and the edge of the sealed agreement. "Beginning tomorrow at sunrise, Elias is to be granted supervised access to his former rooms and the household records," Adrian ordered. No servant may refuse his questions. No one may destroy, remove, or alter anything he requests to examine. The captain bowed, visibly startled. Adrian handed him the agreement, then looked back at Elias with an intensity colder than anger and far more personal. 30 days, he said. Find the person who tried to kill my son, and I will release you from this family. Fail, and at midnight on the final day, I carry out the original sentence myself. Dust spun through a blade of afternoon light as the captain of the guard turned an iron key in the west wing door. The lock yielded with a reluctant scrape, releasing air that smelled of old paper, dried lavender, and rooms sealed too long. Elias stepped across the threshold while 2 guards remained outside under strict orders not to touch anything. This had been the former Step Omega's private chamber, abandoned after Adrian confined him to the east tower. Faded blue wallpaper peeled above a narrow writing desk. Heavy curtains smothered the windows, leaving the room cold enough to sting Elias's fingers. Nothing resembled the lair of the cruel schemer described in the household testimony. There were no trophies, no hidden luxuries, only locked drawers, medicine bottles, and scratch marks around the bedposts. Elias pulled on cotton gloves and searched methodically. Beneath the desk, his fingertips found a ridge where smooth oak should have been flat. He pressed it. A concealed panel sprang open with a wooden click. Inside lay 3 letters tied with black thread and a miniature portrait of Adrian. Someone had carved deep lines across the Alpha's painted face, yet the cuts looked frantic rather than hateful. Elias unfolded the first letter. The ink had faded brown, but one sentence remained clear: increase the dosage whenever he resists. The second contained payments authorized only by an initial, L. The third warned the former Step Omega that Noah would suffer if he told Adrian what had been done to him. A metallic clang sounded behind Elias. The door had slammed shut. Captain. He crossed the room and seized the handle. It refused to turn. From inside the wall came a faint hiss. Bitter almond mixed with something sweet coated the back of his throat. Elias wrapped the letters in the portrait's velvet backing and pushed them beneath his shirt. His eyes watered as he dragged a chair toward the window, but its brass latch had been soldered closed. Outside, boots struck the corridor. The captain shouted orders, followed by the crash of a shoulder against reinforced oak. Elias swung the chair at the glass. It bounced from the thick pane, wrenching his wrists, and gray vapor continued spilling through the carved vent above the fireplace. A deep impact shook the hinges. Then another. On the third, Blackwood split inward and Adrian came through it in a storm of splinters. He had discarded his coat, blood darkened one white cuff where the broken door had grazed him. Stay back, Elias rasped. The room is poisoned. Adrian ignored him. Pressing a sleeve over his mouth, he crossed the icy chamber, lifted Elias against his chest, and carried him into the corridor. The captain ordered every west wing window opened while guards rushed past with wet cloths. Adrian did not release Elias until they reached the courtyard, where rain chilled the flagstones and clean air swept beneath the arches. Elias coughed against the Alpha's shoulder. Adrian's grip tightened once, hard enough to reveal what his expression refused to show, before he set Elias on a stone bench. You broke the door yourself, Elias said. Waiting for an axe would have taken too long. Adrian crouched before him, storm-gray eyes moving over his face and hands. Did you find anything? Elias drew out the wrapped letters. Adrian reached for them, but Elias closed his fingers around the bundle. Evidence remains under my control until I know who locked that door. The captain stiffened. Adrian looked from Elias's clenched hand to the poison chamber above them. Rain gathered on his lashes, and for the first time, the cold head of House Blackwood yielded ground inside his own estate. Agreed, he said. From now on, you choose which rooms are sealed and which servants are questioned. The captain answers to you during the investigation. Elias placed the letters against his chest. Behind them, the guards exchanged startled glances. Adrian rose and removed his signet ring, pressing the heavy black seal into Elias's palm. "Anyone who refuses you," he said, closing Elias's fingers around the warm metal, "refuses me." Rain tapped the leaded windows in an uneven rhythm while the fire hissed against damp wood. Bitter medicinal steam drifted through the bedchamber, mixing with the fading metallic odor that still clung to Elias's hair after the gas trap. By midnight, the poison had left his blood, but another fever had taken its place. Heat rolled beneath his skin in punishing waves. He gripped the linen sheets until the fabric twisted around his fingers, fighting the instincts of a body whose rules he had inherited without understanding. Beyond the locked door, 2 guards stood under strict orders. Inside, Adrian replaced the cold cloth across Elias's forehead with his own hands. "The physician said suppressants could react with the poison," Adrian said. His sleeves were rolled to his elbows, and a shallow cut crossed one knuckle from breaking through the chamber door. "So we wait until it passes." Elias turned his face toward the pillow. Adrian's cedar scent made the fever easier to bear, which only made his presence more dangerous. "You should leave." "No, that wasn't a request." Adrian set the silver basin aside. It struck the table with a quiet chime. "Neither was my answer." A fresh cramp tightened Elias's body. He swung his feet onto the cold floor, determined to reach the adjoining washroom alone, but his knees gave way. Adrian caught him around the waist. For one breath, instinct erased the distance between them. Elias's forehead rested against the alpha's shoulder, warm cedar quieted the frantic pulse under his jaw. Adrian's grip tightened, then deliberately loosened. He guided Elias back onto the mattress and stepped away. "I will not take advantage of a fever you did not choose," he said. "Even if every law in this house says you belong to me." The words landed harder than the trap had. The old Elias had expected possession from his husband. This man was offering restraint when no witness could reward him for it. Elias pulled the blanket higher, watching Adrian drag an armchair beside the bed instead of climbing into it. Hour by hour, the cold alpha measured water, opened the windows when the room grew stifling, and ordered every servant away whenever Elias's scent intensified. At dawn, pale light spread across the carpet. The fever finally loosened. Elias woke to the scrape of leather against wood. Adrian had fallen asleep upright, one hand still wrapped around the bedpost as though he had anchored himself there. A servant entered with fresh towels and the clothes recovered from the sealed west wing. Elias pushed himself upright. "Leave them." The servant bowed and withdrew. Adrian woke instantly, his gaze sweeping the room before settling on Elias. "Better? Enough to work." Elias reached for the folded coat he had worn during the search. The black signet ring on his finger clicked against one of the brass buttons. As he lifted the garment, something fell from its pocket, a gray leather glove, collected among the displaced evidence before the gas had spread. Elias froze. Beneath the smoke and medicinal herbs lay a faint fragrance, winter pear sharpened by clove. The same scent had lingered near Noah's mouth when Elias found him unable to breathe. Adrian crossed the room, but Elias raised the glove before he could touch it. "Do you recognize this?" Adrian's eyes narrowed. "It belongs to someone in my private circle. Someone close enough to approach Noah without suspicion." Elias pressed the glove between both palms. A trace of powder marked the inner seam, but the scent alone had already shifted the ground beneath them. Adrian's jaw hardened. "Give me the name you suspect." Elias looked at the bruised knuckles that had broken down a poison door, then at the chair where the alpha had spent the night choosing restraint over entitlement. Trusting him now carried a different price. "Not yet. If you confront them, Noah becomes leverage." Adrian went still. Elias removed the Blackwood signet and placed it against Adrian's chest, closing the alpha's hand around his own seal. "You gave me authority. Prove you meant it. Do nothing until I set the trap." The fire cracked behind them. Adrian looked down at their joined hands, then returned the ring to Elias's finger and folded the glove inside his coat. "You have until tomorrow night," he said. "After that, no rank, blood, or history will protect the person who touched my son." Elias caught his wrist before he could turn away. "And if it is the person you trust most?" Adrian's gaze dropped briefly to Elias's hand, then rose. "With none of its former ice. Then I will trust the Omega who gave me a reason to doubt." Outside, the morning bells began to toll. Inside the bedchamber, the balance of House Blackwood shifted toward Elias, and the unknown traitor had less than 2 days before the cold alpha turned against one of his own. Crystal chandeliers trembled above the royal ballroom as the orchestra cut off mid-waltz, leaving only the hiss of candles and the scrape of silk across marble. Gold light flashed against Elias's untouched wineglass while cold air slipped through the towering windows, carrying the faint scent of snow. Elias Blackwood stands accused of abusing his stepson, poisoning the child against his own household, and feigning memory loss to escape judgment. The royal herald lowered the sealed complaint. Whispers moved through the nobles like dry leaves. Elias stepped away from Adrian before anyone could interpret their closeness as protection. The gray glove from the previous night remained secured elsewhere, exposing it without proving who had worn it would only warn the traitor. Tonight, survival required a different weapon. "Bring forward the witnesses," Elias said. His steady voice crossed the ballroom. "And let them speak where everyone can hear." The accusation sponsor had expected denial, not consent. Servants were summoned, each repeating stories inherited from someone else: a locked nursery door, a bruised wrist, a frightened child. None had witnessed Elias harm Noah. When the Blackwood physician was called, Elias took control before the herald could reshape the testimony. "When Noah collapsed, what did you observe?" "His airway was closing," the physician answered. "And who administered the treatment?" A pause stretched beneath the chandeliers. "You did. Without your intervention, he might not have survived." The murmurs changed pitch. Elias placed both palms on the cold evidence table. "I will answer for every act committed by the man whose face I wear. But I will not confess to poisoning a child I saved." A side door opened. The captain of the guard entered first, then stopped as a smaller figure slipped past him. Noah crossed the marble floor in formal black clothes, his shoes striking sharp, determined notes. Elias's breath caught. The child was supposed to remain under guard at Blackwood Manor, far from whoever had filed the accusation. "Noah," Adrian said, the single word low enough to vibrate through the silence. "I told the captain I was coming." Noah's fingers closed around the edge of the evidence table. He did not look at Elias at first. "My stepfather used to make me afraid," he said, and several nobles leaned forward. "But this Elias doesn't." The distinction landed harder than a denial. Noah lifted his chin toward the royal dais. "When I couldn't breathe, everyone else argued. He helped me. He stays outside my room when nightmares wake me because I asked him not to come inside. Bad people don't stop at the door when you tell them to." Elias's knuckles whitened against the polished wood. Noah had chosen to defend him while preserving the truth of what had happened before. A noble near the dais snapped, "The child has clearly been manipulated. Remove the Omega and question the boy privately." 2 royal guards advanced. Elias immediately moved between them and Noah, surrendering the protection of Adrian's side without waiting for permission. "You will not isolate a 7-year-old witness to make his testimony more convenient." A guard reached for Elias's arm. The scent of winter cedar struck the room before the hand made contact. Adrian crossed the distance in 3 measured steps and caught the guard's wrist, not violently, but with enough authority to stop every sword belt from shifting. His other hand settled at Elias's back, warm and unmistakably deliberate. Until now, the cold alpha had protected his heir, his house, and his name. This choice was different. He faced the assembled court rather than shielding the gesture from them. "No one touches my Omega." Silence swallowed the ballroom. Adrian removed the Blackwood signet from his finger and placed it beside the royal complaint, the metal ringing against stone. If this court intends to prosecute Elias without a direct witness, it may prosecute the head of House Blackwood beside him. His investigation now carries my authority. My captain answers. To him, and any accusation against him will be examined as an attack upon my household. The nobles who had smiled moments earlier lowered their eyes. Elias turned, close enough to feel Adrian's body heat through their formal coats. You may lose your seat on the royal council for this. Adrian did not look toward the throne. A seat can be replaced. His gaze remained on Elias, stripped of its practiced distance. You cannot. Noah reached between them and took Elias's hand. Adrian covered both with his own, transforming a public trial into a declaration no one in the kingdom could misunderstand. Across the ballroom, a chair scraped abruptly. One place among the Blackwood relatives stood empty. Lucien Blackwood had disappeared before the royal doors were sealed. Cold rain hissed against the carriage windows, blurring the forest into streaks of black and silver. Inside, Noah's abandoned scarf lay across the leather seat, still carrying the faint scent of cedar soap. Elias clenched it as the carriage raced toward the old Blackwood bell tower. Across from him, Adrian sat rigid beneath the swinging lantern, one hand braced against the wall while the other held a note found in Noah's empty bedroom. Come alone, step omega. Midnight. Or the boy pays for your borrowed life. You should have stayed at the estate, Adrian said. So should you. Elias met his gaze. Yet here we are. A church bell groaned beyond the trees. Before the carriage fully stopped, Elias opened the door and jumped into the rain. Adrian caught his wrist, but Elias twisted free and slammed the iron gate between them. Forgive me. He dropped the bar into place. This is the first decision I've made that belongs entirely to me. Adrian struck the gate hard enough to rattle its hinges. Elias. Elias ran toward the tower. Wet stone chilled his palm as he pushed through the entrance. Inside, a single oil lamp burned above a spiral staircase. The air smelled of dust, damp rope, and the sweet medicinal fragrance Elias had first detected on the incriminating glove. Noah sat bound to a wooden chair on the landing, pale but awake. Lucien Blackwood stood behind him with a hand on his shoulder. Let him go. Elias said. His boots scraped over grit as he stepped into the lamplight. Lucien smiled. You really are different. Noah has nothing to do with this. Noah has everything to do with it. Adrian needed an heir. I needed House Blackwood to fracture. Lucien removed a small amber vial from his coat. The old Elias was convenient. Lonely, resented, desperate to be loved. A few drops in his tonic made him volatile. Concentrated pheromones did the rest. Rain tapped through cracks in the tower walls. Elias looked at the vial, then at Noah's trembling fingers. The scattered memories inside this body, the headaches, missing hours, bruises around wrists, locked into place with terrible simplicity. He wasn't born cruel, Elias said. You made him easier to control. Not entirely. I merely sharpened what was already there. Lucien's eyes narrowed. But then you woke in his skin and ruined everything. A crash thundered from below. Metal tore from stone as Adrian forced the outer gate open. Lucien pulled Noah to his feet and pressed a narrow blade against the boy's coat without breaking the fabric. Send him away. Elias moved between Noah and the stairs. Adrian, stop. Footsteps halted beneath them. Adrian appeared at the curve of the staircase, soaked through, his eyes fixed first on Noah, then on Elias. Step aside. I can't. Elias's nails dug into the damp wood of the railing. There's something you must know before this ends. Lucien gave a quiet laugh. Tell him. The bell swung overhead, releasing a deep vibration through the floorboards. Elias faced Adrian. The man you married was drugged and manipulated, but I am not him. I remember dying in another world. I woke in this body 30 days before you were supposed to execute it. Adrian said nothing. Water slid from his hair to his jaw. Elias forced the rest through a throat gone dry. I knew your name, Noah's illness, and the ending waiting for me because your lives were once a story where I came from. I changed what happened because Noah deserved safety. Because the man whose body I inherited deserved the truth. His grip loosened around the scarf. And because somewhere along the way, leaving you stopped. Feeling like freedom. Lucien's blade shifted. Adrian did not advance. Instead, he lowered his weapon and placed it on the stone step. You believe that confession makes you a stranger to me? His voice carried beneath the ringing bell. I watched you protect my son when no one was looking. I watched you challenge me when obedience would have been safer. Whatever name your soul carried before, those choices were yours. Noah suddenly drove his heel down on Lucien's foot and tore away. Elias caught the child and turned his own body between Noah and the blade. Adrian moved only then, crossing the landing and wrenching Lucien's arm behind his back. The vial struck the floor and rolled harmlessly into the shadows. Noah buried his face against Elias's chest. Adrian held Lucien against the cold stone, but his gaze remained on Elias. You are not the man I married, he said. The words landed cleanly, without anger. You are the man I choose to believe. Lucien's smile vanished. Outside, Blackwood guards poured through the broken gate. Yet Elias could hear only Adrian's next words above the bell. When this is over, you will decide whether to stay. Not the contract. Not this house. You. The bell above the abandoned tower groaned in the wind, each iron note shuddering through wet stone and rotting beams. Lightning flashed through the arched openings, turning the chamber white for an instant and revealing Lucien Blackwood beside the bell rope, one gloved hand gripping Noah's shoulder. Elias stood across from them, rainwater dripping from his hair onto the cracked floor. Let him go, he said, placing the small vial of antidote at his feet. You wanted the villain to die. I'm here. Lucien's smile sharpened. He ordered Elias beneath the bell's suspended counterweight, then released Noah to retrieve the vial. But Noah did not obey. The 7-year-old stamped on Lucien's instep, twisted free of his coat, and ducked beneath the swinging rope. His shoes slapped against stone as he ran. Elias dropped to one knee and caught him against his chest. The child smelled of rain and dust, his breath coming in hot, ragged bursts. Lucien seized the release lever. Chains rattled. Overhead. The massive counterweight plunged, dragging the bell rope through its pulley with a metallic scream. Elias shoved Noah toward the stairwell and turned, expecting the impact promised by the old story. Instead, a dark shape struck him from the side. Adrian carried them both across the floor as the weight smashed into the place where Elias had been standing, spraying chips of stone through the freezing air. Adrian rose before the echoes died. He pushed Noah behind Elias, crossed the chamber, and drove Lucien against the tower wall. By Blackwood law, Lucien gasped, the head of the house must execute anyone who threatens his heir. Your Omega confessed he is an impostor. Adrian's signet ring caught the lightning as he tore it from his hand. Then Blackwood law ends with me. He hurled the ring through the arched opening. It struck the outer ledge once, then disappeared into the storm. Lucien lunged for the fallen vial, but Noah kicked it across the floor. Elias caught it, pulled the concealed ledger from inside Lucien's coat, and held both beyond his reach. The pages carried Lucien's seal beside payments for suppressants, altered pheromones, and bribes to household servants. No new mystery remained, only proof of what Lucien had already admitted. Boots thundered up the spiral staircase. The captain of the guard entered with 6 Blackwood guards, their lanterns spilling amber light across the chamber. Adrian did not release Lucien. Take him alive. The physician will test the vial, and Elias will present the ledger. The captain hesitated at receiving orders concerning the house from an Omega. Adrian's voice dropped lower. During this investigation, you answer to my spouse. The captain bowed to Elias. Yes, my lord. Lucien's certainty finally cracked. You would surrender your authority for him? No, Adrian said. I am using it once, correctly. Elias pressed his palm over Noah's damp hair. I came here believing my death could repair another man's crimes. His fingers tightened around the ledger. And I thought leaving you would make me free. It doesn't feel like freedom anymore. Adrian turned from Lucien. Rain silvered his black coat, and a shallow cut marked his temple, but he stopped several feet away rather than claiming the space between them. You are not the man I married, he said. The words landed cleanly, without anger. You are the man I choose to believe. Lucien's smile vanished. Outside, Blackwood guards poured through the broken gate. Yet Elias could hear only Adrian's next words above the bell. When this is over, you will decide whether to stay. Not the contract. Not this house. You. Adrian placed the estate keys and the torn marriage contract on the stone between them, then stepped back. Elias looked at the keys, at Noah clutching his sleeve, and at the alpha who had broken his inheritance rather than force his spouse into another cage. For the first time since waking in a condemned man's body, the next chapter belonged entirely to him. He picked up the keys. Then I'll return to Blackwood House, Elias said, meeting Adrian's gaze, but this time, we rebuild it on my terms. Morning mist drifted across the Blackwood courtyard, carrying the scent of wet stone and cedar through the broken gates. Beneath the pale gold light, the household staff stood in silence while the captain of the guard fastened iron restraints around Lucien Blackwood's wrists. The recovered ledger rested beneath his arm, its pages bearing every payment, every vial, and every order used to control the former step Omega and poison Noah. Lucien's furious protests faded beneath the clatter of the prison carriage. Adrian had surrendered his hereditary right to judge a Blackwood by blood. Lucien would face the royal court instead. Elias watched the carriage disappear, Noah's small hand tucked securely inside his own. The Blackwood physician had cleared them both before dawn, though a white bandage still circled Elias's palm and each breath carried the ache of the bell tower. Behind them, Adrian addressed the assembled household. The old authority of this house ends today. His voice crossed the courtyard without rising. He ordered the captain to answer to Elias during the estate's reform and dissolved every rule that had denied an Omega control over his residence, property, or child. Then Adrian removed the black signet ring from his finger and placed it beside the sealed ledgers. Power was no longer something he intended to use as a leash. By noon, Elias stood outside the eastern gate with a packed case at his feet. The 30 days were over. Their agreement required his departure, and Adrian had not tried to stop him. Noah pressed his face against Elias's coat, breathing in the faint bergamot scent that had become home to him. Do you have to go? I have to know I can, Elias answered, smoothing the boy's dark hair. Gravel shifted behind them. Adrian approached without guards, his coat open to the cold wind, carrying neither command nor demand. He placed the estate keys and the torn marriage contract on the stone between them, then stepped back. You told me you were not the man I married, Adrian said. I believe you. Elias's fingers tightened around Noah's sleeve. And you still came after me. I fell for the man who saved my son, challenged my house, and told me the truth when a lie could have kept him safe. Adrian's cedar scent remained carefully restrained. But love does not make you mine. If you leave, your accounts, name, and freedom remain yours. If you stay, every door and every decision will be shared. Wind stirred the two halves of the contract until one slipped from the stone and dissolved into the damp grass. Elias looked past the gate toward the open road. In the life he had stolen from death, escape had once meant survival. Now leaving Adrian no longer felt like freedom, it felt like allowing another dead man's cruelty to make his final choice. Noah loosened his grip without being asked. That small act settled it. Elias could walk away, and because he could, returning became his decision. He picked up the keys. Then I'll return to Blackwood House, Elias said, meeting Adrian's gaze, but this time, we rebuild it on my terms. Adrian bowed his head, not as alpha to omega, but as one equal accepting another's conditions. On your terms. Elias crossed the threshold first. Noah ran beside him, his laughter ringing against walls that had known only whispers, while Adrian followed a respectful pace behind until Elias stopped and held out his hand. Adrian took it carefully, warmth meeting warmth beneath the winter sun. The condemned step omega had awakened inside a fate written by someone else, but the cold alpha who once would have executed him now loved him enough to surrender the ending, and Elias loved him enough to choose what came after.